For 6 years, I thought I knew my husband. We had a beautiful life, planned to start a family, even looked for a weekend house together. But on one trip, one normal weekend, I learned the truth: he already had a family. And he'd been lying to me for years. I'm Anna. I'm 34, and I work in event management, corporate events, festivals, conferences. I'm used to chaos and juggling a million details. If there's one thing this job teaches you, it's how to read people. You have to. You learn pretty quickly who's fake, who's sincere, and who's playing you. That's why I thought I had a good handle on my life. Especially my marriage. I've been with my husband Jason for 6 years. Married for 4. We met at a business party, a real swanky event. He was, still is, the marketing director for a big development company. You know the type: polished, confident, great smile, always knows the right thing to say. Everyone liked him. I liked him. Things moved fast with us. We became a couple almost immediately. Within a year, we moved into this beautiful apartment in the city center. We traveled a lot, short trips, longer vacations, wine weekends. On paper, we were the perfect couple. The kind of couple people envy on Instagram. We talked about having kids. We even started planning to buy a small house outside the city as a future weekend place, something for when we started a family. I honestly thought life was good. About 2 years ago, Jason started traveling a lot for work. His company was expanding into this small town in Washington state. He said they were developing a new region and that he had to go there frequently, sometimes for a few days, sometimes for a week at a time. He always talked about that town. It's beautiful, he'd say. There's a lake, forests, fresh air. If only we had a little place there, it would be perfect. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was just small talk. But this spring, I was the one who brought it up. I remember it so clearly. We were having dinner at home, wine, casual conversation. I said, maybe we should look for a house there. You say it's a great place, and it would be convenient for your work. At first, he hesitated. Which, looking back, should have been a red flag. Now's not really the time, he said. But I pressed. Why not? Let's at least go and look. I'm curious. After a bit more hesitation, he agreed. Okay. It would be convenient to have a base there for work. And that's how it all started. We planned a trip for 3 days. There was a real estate exhibition that weekend, so it seemed like the perfect excuse. I was excited: Pinterest boards, ideas for cozy cottages. I imagined us sitting by a lake, sipping coffee, watching our future kids run around. God, I was so naive. So, we had this 3-day trip planned. It felt exciting, honestly, like we were entering a new chapter. Jason acted normal in the days leading up to it. Maybe a little more on edge than usual, but I chalked that up to work stress. He'd been talking about this town for months. I figured he was just anxious about whether we'd actually find a house we liked. The morning of the trip, we packed up early. Jason insisted on driving. He was unusually quiet during the drive, which I noticed. Normally he'd play music, chat about work, or brainstorm house ideas with me. But that day? He was checking his phone a lot, kind of distracted. Every time I asked about house listings or the real estate expo, he gave short answers. Yeah, I've got a few agents we can talk to. Or, let's just see what's available when we get there. I didn't want to push too hard. Maybe he was tired. I told myself not to overthink it. We arrived in town around noon. The place was exactly like he'd described: quaint, green, charming. The kind of town you'd see in a Hallmark movie. There was a lake in the center, tree-lined streets, cozy little shops. We checked into this cute boutique hotel near the main square. Jason had booked the room ahead of time, and the front desk clerk greeted him like an old friend. That surprised me a little. I even teased him, "You're quite the regular here, huh?" He just laughed it off. I stay here when I'm in town for work. Fair enough. I mean, if he'd been traveling here for 2 years, it made sense. That afternoon we hit a few house viewings. The real estate expo wasn't until the next day, so we'd scheduled a couple private showings. Jason had connections through his company, so we met with an agent he supposedly knew. The houses were fine, older cottages, some fixer-uppers, a couple newer builds. But here's what stuck out: Jason seemed tense the whole time. Normally he's smooth, charming, great with people. But during these showings, he barely talked. He let me do most of the asking. When the agent asked what kind of place we were looking for, Jason deflected. "We're just exploring," he'd say. I started to get this weird feeling in my gut. That evening, after dinner at a local bistro, I suggested taking a walk around town. The weather was perfect, cool, crisp, the kind of night you want to stroll hand in hand. But Jason suddenly hesitated. "I've got a couple work calls I need to take," he said, checking his phone again. "Why don't you go for a walk on your own?" That stopped me. Jason never passed up a chance for one-on-one time when we traveled. And since when did he take work calls at 8 p.m. on a Friday night? Still, I didn't want to start a fight in the middle of a trip. So I forced a smile. "Okay. I'll wander around." I grabbed my purse and headed out. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I walked through the main square, poked into a couple shops, snapped some pictures. I figured I'd grab a coffee and bring one back for Jason. That's when it happened. I ducked into this little café on a side street, super cute place, mismatched chairs, local art on the walls. I was standing in line when I heard someone say my name. "Anna?" I turned, and there was Sarah. An old coworker of mine. We'd worked together at an event company a few years back. We weren't super close, but friendly. She looked surprised to see me. "What are you doing here?" I smiled. "Jason and I are here for the weekend. Looking at houses, actually. He's been coming here for work, so we thought we'd check it out." And that's when everything started to crack. Sarah blinked. "Oh. I didn't realize you guys were together here. I mean, I've seen Jason around a lot. He works here, right? And, well, I thought he lived here most of the week." My stomach dropped. "Sorry?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Sarah looked confused, maybe even a little awkward. "I've seen him at the lake with his family. A couple times, actually. I just assumed, maybe I got it wrong." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What family?" I asked. My voice barely came out. Sarah hesitated. "I mean, there was a woman and a little boy." I didn't really think about it. Maybe it was relatives. I forced a smile. "Maybe. Thanks, though." I somehow ordered my coffee. I have no idea how I didn't drop the cup on my way out. My hands were shaking. I walked back to the hotel in a daze. And here's the part that still makes me sick to remember. When I walked in, Jason was sitting on the bed, scrolling his phone like nothing had happened. He looked up and smiled. "Hey babe, how was your walk?" I just nodded. "Nice." He started talking about the expo the next day, about houses we should check out. And I sat there thinking, who the hell is this man? And what have I gotten myself into? I barely slept that night. When we got back to the room, Jason was acting totally normal. Cheerful, even. He kept talking about the houses we'd seen, showing me a few listings on his laptop. I forced myself to smile and nod along. But inside, my head was spinning. Sarah's words kept looping in my brain. "I thought he lived here most of the week. I've seen him with his family." What family? But here's the thing, I'm not the kind of person who jumps to conclusions. I plan events for a living. I know how fast rumors start, how quickly things can get twisted. Maybe Sarah got it wrong. It was a small town. Maybe Jason had been here with clients or coworkers and someone misread the situation. Maybe the woman was a colleague, and the kid was someone else's. I kept telling myself that. Over and over. But the way Sarah said it, that hesitation, that look in her eyes. It didn't feel like a random mistake. Still, I didn't want to blow up my marriage over something a former coworker thought she saw. What if I was wrong? What if I confronted Jason and it really was innocent? I'd look paranoid, jealous, crazy. And Jason? He was so good at making things sound logical. If I pushed too soon without proof, he'd spin it. I knew he would. That's why I kept quiet. That night, Jason suggested we watch a movie. I sat on the bed next to him, trying to act normal, but my stomach was in knots. Every time he picked up his phone, I found myself watching him. He kept texting, smiling at the screen a few times. I asked, "Work stuff?" He glanced up. "Yeah, just a couple things I need to handle before tomorrow." I nodded. But my mind was racing. Was it really work? Or was he texting her? At one point, he went into the bathroom, and I had this sudden urge to grab his phone and look. But I didn't. That felt like crossing a line I wasn't ready for, not yet. When he came out, I forced a smile and told him I was tired. We turned off the lights. Jason fell asleep quickly. I lay awake for hours. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the image, Jason here, in this town, with some other woman, and a child. At some point around 3 a.m., I sat up in bed and looked at him, sleeping soundly next to me, as if everything was fine. And I realized something that chilled me to my core. I didn't actually know what he did when he was here. He always said he was traveling for work. He always said he had meetings, site visits, corporate dinners. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? But now I wasn't so sure. The next morning, everything felt surreal. Jason woke up in a good mood, completely normal, like the night before hadn't happened. We went downstairs for breakfast at the hotel café. He was talking about the expo, asking if I wanted to look at certain neighborhoods today. I smiled and nodded, but inside? My head was spinning. Sarah's words wouldn't leave me. I've seen him with his family. I thought he lived here most of the week. And yet, maybe she was wrong. Maybe she'd mistaken someone else for Jason. Or maybe the family was clients or extended relatives. Jason had mentioned company events in this town. Maybe it was some work function she'd seen. I wanted to believe that. Desperately. But something felt wrong. I told myself, just observe today. Stay calm. You don't have any proof yet. We went to the real estate expo. It was in this big conference hall by the lake. Booths everywhere, builders, mortgage lenders, realtors. Jason seemed relaxed, in his element. He introduced me to several agents. "This is my wife, Anna," he said, smiling. And for a moment, I felt ridiculous for doubting him. Look at him. If there was some secret life, why would he bring me here? Why would he introduce me to people? But little things kept gnawing at me. At one booth, an agent greeted Jason warmly. "Hey Jason. Good to see you again." She glanced at me, then back at him. Jason laughed. "Yeah, keeping busy here." Nothing obviously suspicious, but it felt familiar. Too familiar. Jason had always told me his trips here were quick work visits. 2 days, maybe 3. He said he mostly stayed in corporate housing. But now I was noticing how many people already knew him. And not just in a passing way. It felt more personal than a business acquaintance. Later, while we were getting coffee at the expo, Jason got a text. He looked at it, his face changed, tense, distracted. "I've got to step outside for a minute," he said. He didn't say it was a work call this time, just left. I sat alone at the cafe table for almost 20 minutes, stirring my coffee. And the thoughts kept creeping in. How well do I really know what he's doing here? Where does he actually stay? Who is he really seeing? I'd never asked to see his corporate housing. Why would I? I trusted him. But now, that trust was cracking. Fast. When Jason came back, he smiled again like nothing had happened. Sorry about that, some last-minute stuff for Monday's meeting. I forced a smile back. But something inside me had shifted. I couldn't shake this gut feeling anymore. And I knew, by tonight, I wasn't going to be able to keep pretending. After the expo, Jason suggested we go back to the hotel for a bit, said he had some emails to catch up on. That actually made more sense to me than him wanting to go out, considering how on edge he'd seemed. I was fine with it. Honestly, I didn't think I could sit through a dinner acting like everything was normal. Back in the room, Jason got on his laptop. I pretended to scroll my phone, but really, my mind was going in circles. What if Sarah was wrong? What if it wasn't him she saw? But what if it was? And what if that family wasn't a mistake? I tried to reason with myself. He traveled here often, of course some people would know him. That didn't mean anything by itself. But there were too many little things adding up. The way he avoided going out with me last night. How distracted he'd been all day. The strange tension in him that I'd never noticed before. And the biggest thing I couldn't get past, I'd never once seen where he actually stayed on his work trips. He'd always said corporate housing or company apartment, but he'd never shown me photos or mentioned details. I'd never questioned it, until now. Jason glanced at the clock and shut his laptop. I think I'm going to turn in early, he said. Long day. I nodded. Yeah, me too. I got ready for bed, but there was no way I could sleep. My heart was racing. When Jason started snoring softly, I stared at the ceiling, debating with myself. You can't accuse him of anything yet. But you can't ignore this either. You need to know. That's when I remembered, his laptop. I knew the password. He wasn't one to change things like that. My pulse shot up. I waited another 10 minutes, making sure he was fully asleep. Then, slowly, carefully, I slipped out of bed and opened the laptop. For a second, I hesitated. What if you find something? Are you ready for that? But the truth was, not knowing was worse. So I logged in. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, frozen. My heart was pounding so loud I was afraid it would wake him. Stay calm, I told myself. You're just looking. Nothing more yet. I started with his email, basic stuff first. At first glance, everything looked normal. Work emails, forwarded documents, meeting invites. The same type of emails I'd seen him deal with for years. But now I wasn't looking at the surface. Now I was reading every subject line twice. That's when I noticed it, a folder in his inbox labeled Local Agents. I didn't remember him mentioning setting up a separate folder just for that. And Jason wasn't the most organized person with emails. I clicked. The first few emails were straightforward, property listings, open house invites. Normal enough, considering we were looking at houses. But then, about 5 emails in, I saw one with a subject line that made my stomach drop. Tuesday's viewing, and cover story. Cover story? I clicked it open. And there it was, in black and white. If Megan asks, I'll say it's company housing. Thanks again for helping me keep everything organized. My throat went dry. Megan? Who was Megan? And why would Jason need to cover something with her? I sat there, my fingers hovering over the trackpad, trying to process. Okay. Maybe it's work-related. Maybe this is some misunderstanding. But I didn't believe it. Not anymore. I felt this sickening pull in my gut. I wasn't ready to stop. I moved to his documents folder. There were receipts, invoices, expense reports, nothing unusual. Until one file jumped out at me, birth certificate, local. Why would he have that? My hands were shaking now. I double-clicked the file. A scanned birth certificate appeared on the screen. And that's when the bottom dropped out of my world. Father, Jason, our last name. Mother, Megan Reynolds. Child, date of birth, 2 years ago. I couldn't breathe. I read it again. And again. It didn't change. Jason. My husband. The man sleeping in the bed right behind me. Had a child. With another woman. I sat there for what felt like an hour, staring at the screen, unable to move. My head was spinning so fast I couldn't think straight. Sarah was right. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was real. And now I had proof. I don't know how long I sat there. The glow of the laptop screen felt almost too bright in the dark room. Jason was still snoring softly behind me, completely unaware that everything was unraveling. My hands had gone cold. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get a full breath. It's real. It's actually real. I kept reading the birth certificate again, hoping somehow I'd misunderstood. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it wasn't my Jason. But the name was right. His full legal name. The dates lined up. The location was this town. There was no way to explain this away. Jason had a child. A whole other life. And he'd been lying to me for God knows how long. I felt sick. At one point, I thought I might actually throw up. I had to close my eyes and press my fists against my knees to stay grounded. Okay. Breathe. You need to think. Don't do anything stupid. I glanced over my shoulder. Jason was still fast asleep. I knew I couldn't afford to get sloppy now. Whatever I did next, I needed to be smart. I carefully closed the document, backed out of the folders, and shut the laptop. I placed it exactly where it had been. Then I slipped back into bed, lying as still as I could. But sleep wasn't going to happen. My brain was in overdrive. What else was he hiding? How long had this been going on? How had I missed it? And now, what the hell was I supposed to do? I kept replaying the last 2 years in my mind, his work trips, the way he always insisted on going alone, how vague he'd been about details. How I'd trusted him completely. The worst part? What if there had never been any intention to stop? What if he'd been planning to juggle both lives forever? At some point, the sun started to rise. I could hear faint traffic starting outside. Jason stirred next to me, yawning. Morning, he mumbled, completely oblivious. I turned my face away so he wouldn't see the look in my eyes. Morning, I managed to say. I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't confront him. Not yet. Not here. Not in this hotel room, in this town, with no backup and no plan. I needed time. I needed to get home. I needed to gather real evidence, solid, undeniable proof. So as calmly as I could, I said. I'm not feeling great this morning. Maybe I should head home early. Jason didn't even blink. Yeah? If you want, I can drop you at the train station after breakfast. Like it was no big deal. I forced a smile. That would be great. And in that moment, sitting there across from the man who had just shattered my entire life, something hardened inside me. You're going to regret this, Jason. You have no idea who you're dealing with. The train ride home felt endless. Jason had dropped me at the station that morning, completely relaxed. Get some rest, he'd said, kissing my cheek. Like nothing was wrong. I sat by the window the entire ride back, heart racing, mind spinning. A child. A whole other life. And he'd been lying to my face for years. By the time the train pulled in, I had one goal, find out exactly how deep this went. I didn't go home first. I called Claire, my lawyer, and asked if she had time that afternoon. I think she could hear it in my voice. "Come in," she said. "I'll clear my schedule." An hour later, I was sitting in her office, still feeling half in shock. I told her everything: Sarah's comment, the tension during the trip, what I'd found on Jason's laptop that night in the hotel. Claire listened carefully, then leaned forward. "Anna, here's what you need to do. First, don't confront him yet. If you tip him off, he'll start deleting things and moving money. You need hard proof." She laid out a strategy. White heavy checkmark as soon as I could. I needed to quietly access Jason's laptop again, at home this time. Make full copies of those emails and documents. White heavy checkmark pull bank records. She suspected joint funds were being used to support this other life. White heavy checkmark hire a private investigator to confirm the situation on the ground, photos, addresses, legal records. White heavy checkmark continue acting normal until we had everything. I nodded. It felt surreal, like I was planning a sting operation against my own husband. But Claire was right. I couldn't just react emotionally. I had to be smart. When I got home, the apartment felt cold, unfamiliar. Jason was still out of town for one more night. I used that window to do what I could, started pulling joint bank statements from our online account. And sure enough, there were regular payments going out to businesses in that town. Rent payments. Grocery stores. Child-related expenses. I printed them all. But the laptop? That would have to wait until Jason was home and left it unattended. I couldn't risk doing anything that might alert him now. That night, alone in our bed, I barely slept. Because tomorrow, Jason would be back. And I would have to look him in the eye, and pretend like everything was still normal. Jason came home the next afternoon. I heard the key turn in the lock and had to force my heart to stop racing. He walked in like it was just another day. Smiling, setting down his bag, leaning in to kiss me. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Yeah," I managed. "Much better." We settled into our normal routine. Jason unpacked a few things, talked about the next steps for house hunting, asked if I wanted to check out a few new listings over the weekend. I kept my smile in place. Nodded. Chatted. But underneath, I was counting every minute. Watching his every move. That night, after dinner and a TV show, Jason started yawning. "I'm going to head to bed early," he said. "Got a lot on my plate tomorrow." He plugged in his laptop on his nightstand, as usual, and got ready for bed. I kept to my routine. Brushed my teeth. Read on my phone in the living room. Gave it time. Finally, when I was sure he was fully asleep, breathing steady, completely out, I made my move. Carefully, quietly, I crept back into the bedroom. His laptop was still on the nightstand. I eased it off, heart pounding, and tiptoed back into the living room. I closed the door softly behind me and logged in. Stay calm. Stay focused. Do this right. This time, I wasn't browsing randomly. I had a plan. I copied everything: emails, attachments, the birth certificate file, notes, calendar entries. I saved it all onto the USB drive Claire had given me. I also checked his calendar more carefully. That's when I saw it, blocks of time labeled as site visits or client dinners, but with private notes like dinner with M/pediatric appointment. Weekend at house, M and child's name. There was no denying it anymore. He wasn't just seeing Megan occasionally. He was living a second life with her. A house. A family. A child. I stared at the screen, feeling cold all over. But at the same time, calmer than I'd been in days. Because now I had proof. I carefully logged out, returned the laptop to his nightstand exactly as it had been, and went back to the living room. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, USB in hand, going over the plan again and again. The next morning, Jason kissed me goodbye on his way to the office. And a few hours later, I was sitting in Claire's office, handing her the drive. She scrolled through the files, nodding. You did perfectly. Now we move to phase 2. That meant hiring the private investigator, someone she trusted, discreet and thorough. Their job, confirm everything on the ground. Get photos. Witnesses. Records. Meanwhile, Claire reminded me, I had to keep acting normal. No slip-ups. And so, for the next week, that's exactly what I did. Dinners. TV nights. Smiling when Jason came home. Even going out with friends and keeping up appearances. But inside? I was ice. Because day by day, the trap was tightening. The first week after I met with Claire was torture. Jason was home, acting like nothing had changed. He'd go to work during the day, come home in the evenings, talk about houses or projects, kiss me goodnight. And through it all, I had to smile. Play the part. Pretend I was still his loving wife. Inside? I was counting every minute. Then, midweek, Jason mentioned it casually over dinner. I've got to go back out next weekend, couple of project meetings in the town. I'll probably stay a few nights. I managed to nod. Makes sense, I said, trying to sound supportive. But inside, my mind was racing. Perfect. This is it. I texted Claire the second he left the room, he's going back this weekend. Her reply came back almost instantly, I'll alert Mark, the PI. We'll get him tailed. The next few days crawled by. Jason packed like normal, suit, laptop, usual routine. Kissed me goodbye Friday morning. I'll be back Tuesday, he said. And just like that, he was gone. I barely slept that weekend. My nerves were shot, constantly checking my phone for updates from Claire. Finally, midweek, I got the message I'd been waiting for. Initial report ready. Meet tomorrow? I was at Claire's office the next afternoon when Mark, the PI, came in, calm and professional. We tracked him the whole weekend, he said. Here's what we've confirmed. He slid a file across the table. I opened it. Photos. Time-stamped. Jason, entering and leaving a house. Same house, multiple days. Megan, documented coming and going. The child. Family-style activities, groceries, the park. Mark summarized. White heavy checkmark Jason is listed on the lease for the property. White heavy checkmark Megan is registered at that address. White heavy checkmark the child's preschool lists Jason as the father. White heavy checkmark Jason stayed there overnight, multiple nights. No hotel involved. No corporate apartment. And the locals? Claire asked. Mark nodded. They think he's with Megan. He's telling people he's separated and finalizing a divorce. It hit me like a punch to the gut. He wasn't even planning to leave her. He'd been planning to leave me. Claire closed the file. Anna, this is airtight. Once we finish the financial audit, we can move. I looked at her, calm now. No more panic. Just ice. No warning, I said. We hit him hard. She smiled slightly. Exactly. And as I left her office, one thought burned in my mind. You picked the wrong woman to fool, Jason. It's my turn now. After that meeting with Claire and Mark, everything shifted. Before, I'd been sick with fear and shock. Now, I felt focused. Cold. Ready. We had photographic proof. Witnesses. Documents. All that remained was the final piece, tracking how much of our joint money Jason had poured into this second life. Claire had already hired a forensic accountant, someone she worked with regularly for high-asset divorce cases. Discreet. Precise. The accountant worked fast. Meanwhile, Jason came home from his business trip acting like nothing had changed. He kissed me hello, unpacked, told me about his meetings, asked if I wanted to reschedule another house hunting weekend. I almost laughed in his face. But I didn't. Not yet. I smiled. Sure, we can look at some more listings. The next week was surreal. I played the part perfectly. Dinners, Netflix, small talk with friends. But every time Jason left the room, my phone buzzed with updates from Claire. And then, midweek, the call came. Anna, Claire said, we have the audit results. You need to come in. I was there that afternoon, sitting across from her and the accountant. The numbers were staggering. Jason had spent tens of thousands of dollars from our joint account on his other life, rent on the house, utilities, groceries, child expenses, even vacation charges from trips I knew nothing about. It wasn't just support. It was a full financial commitment to Megan and the child, funded with money that legally belonged to both of us. Claire laid out the next steps. With this, she said, we can file for divorce with cause, financial misconduct, betrayal of marital assets. You'll be entitled to a larger share of what remains. And damages. I nodded. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted one final piece, to catch Jason in the act again, this time while he thought I was out of town. So we set the trap. I told Jason that I'd booked a 4-day work conference in Seattle. Back-to-back meetings, I said. I'll probably be offline most of the time. He didn't question it. In fact, he seemed pleased. Good, he said. You'll get a break. I'll hold down the fort here. But in reality, I wasn't going anywhere. I stayed at my friend Rachel's apartment, just a few blocks from our place. Meanwhile, Mark was ready. The moment Jason left town again, Mark would be there, camera ready, tracking every move. The trap was set. And this time, there would be no way for Jason to talk his way out. The work trip cover story worked better than I expected. A week after Claire and I planned it, I casually told Jason over dinner. I've got a 4-day conference in Seattle next week. It's pretty packed, workshops, networking events. I'll probably be offline a lot. Jason barely concealed his relief. He smiled, almost too quickly. That's great. You'll get a nice change of scenery. Inside, I wanted to scream. But outwardly, I smiled back. Yeah, looking forward to it. The night before my fake trip, I packed a small suitcase and left it in the hall. I even arranged for a rideshare to pick me up the next morning, just in case Jason was watching. Then I texted Rachel, I'm coming over. Rachel lived just a few blocks from us, and she was completely on board with the plan. She knew everything. Her guest room became my hideout for the next 4 days. As soon as I was gone, Claire alerted Mark. This is it, she told me. If he's going back, we'll get it all. I barely slept that night. The next morning, Mark texted Claire, he's packed. Heading out now. Jason had fallen for it. He left mid-morning, driving straight back to that town. Same house. Same pattern. Mark was ready. Over the next 2 days, Mark tracked everything. White heavy checkmark Jason entering the house with an overnight bag. White heavy checkmark Megan arriving shortly after with their child. White heavy checkmark Jason grocery shopping with Megan. White heavy checkmark Jason attending a children's birthday party at a local community center, with Megan and the child. White heavy checkmark Jason spending multiple nights at the house, no hotel. Each event was photographed, time-stamped, documented. By the end of the 3rd day, the file was thick with evidence. I remember sitting on Rachel's couch, phone buzzing with each new update. My heart pounded with every message. This is it. He's done. By the 4th day, Jason texted me. Hope the conference is going well. Miss you. Can't wait to see you when you're back, Redheart. I stared at the screen, shaking with fury. The same man who had spent the last 3 nights playing happy family with another woman, was texting me like the perfect husband. But this time, the act was over. That afternoon, Claire called. "Anna, it's all there. We're ready to file." And I felt it, this incredible wave of cold determination. "No more waiting," I said. "Let's hit him." I don't think I've ever felt calmer than I did that morning. After 4 sleepless nights at Rachel's apartment, watching Jason's double life unfold in real time, something inside me had settled. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't confused. I was ready. That morning, I met Claire at her office. Everything was in place: Mark's final report, the financial audit, the birth certificate, the emails, the calendar entries. A bulletproof case. Claire handed me the final papers. "We're filing for divorce today, on grounds of fraud, misuse of marital assets, and adultery." I signed them without hesitation. Then we triggered the next step, freezing our joint accounts. Claire had already prepared the paperwork. Within a few hours, every account Jason used for both of his lives was flagged. He wouldn't be able to withdraw large sums, shift money, or liquidate assets without alerting us. As the bank confirmations came through, Claire smiled. "He's going to feel this fast," she said. "And he won't see it coming." By mid-afternoon, everything was done. Divorce filed. Accounts frozen. Evidence secured. All that remained was the confrontation. And I knew exactly how I wanted to handle it. Jason was scheduled to return the next morning. He thought I was still out of town. He had no clue what was waiting for him. I went back to our apartment that evening. It felt surreal, being in that space, knowing what was about to happen. I packed a small bag with essentials, just in case, and set it by the door. I laid out the folder of evidence on the dining table: Mark's report, photos, bank statements, printed emails. Then I waited. That night, I barely slept. My heart wasn't racing anymore. I was steady. Focused. Cold. By morning, I was ready. At 9:30 a.m., I heard Jason's key in the lock. I took a deep breath. Showtime. Jason walked in, whistling softly, a coffee in hand. He looked relaxed, completely unaware of what was waiting for him. He glanced up and froze when he saw me sitting at the dining table. "Anna," he said, surprised. "You're home early?" I didn't move. I didn't smile. "Conference ended early," I said, voice calm. "We need to talk." That's when he saw the folder on the table. He frowned, set down his coffee. "What's this?" I pushed the folder toward him. "Sit down." He hesitated, then slowly lowered himself into the chair across from me. I looked him straight in the eye. My heart was steady. "I know everything, Jason," I said evenly. "About Megan. About the child. About the house. About the money." His face went pale. For a second, he didn't speak, just stared at me, mouth slightly open. Then the words tumbled out in a rush. "Anna, wait, it's not what you think, please, I can explain." I cut him off. "Don't bother," I said, voice sharp now. "Everything is documented. Photos. Financial records. Witnesses. You've been lying to me for years." I watched the panic flood his face. But it wasn't supposed to be like this," he stammered. "I was going to tell you, I was handling it, Stop," I said. "You weren't handling anything. You were building a second life. On our money." I pushed the final document across the table, the divorce filing. "The papers are filed. The accounts are frozen. You won't be hiding anything else." Jason's hands were shaking now. He stood abruptly, pacing. "This will ruin everything," he blurted. "Think about what people will say. We can work through this, don't throw it all away." I stood too, finally letting my fury show. "I'm not the one who threw it away, Jason. You did." He stopped, face flushed with desperation. "Anna, please, don't do this. Let's talk. We can fix this. I shook my head. There's nothing to fix. I'm done. I picked up my bag, the one I'd packed the night before. I'll be staying elsewhere until this is over, I said. My lawyer will be in touch. Jason stood there, stunned, as I walked to the door. The last thing I heard before I closed it behind me was his voice breaking. Anna, please. But I didn't look back. Walking out of that apartment was one of the hardest, and most freeing, things I've ever done. I stayed with Rachel for the first few weeks. Claire handled everything, correspondence with Jason's lawyer, freezing the remaining assets, securing my share. At first, Jason tried to fight. He sent long, emotional texts. Had friends call me, urging me to think it through. Even my parents heard from him. He tried to paint himself as confused, overwhelmed, that he'd made mistakes. But I didn't waver. Claire made it clear to his legal team, we had the evidence, we were pursuing damages, and we weren't settling quietly. Once the financials were fully laid bare, how much of our joint funds had supported his other life, Jason backed down. He knew he was cornered. The divorce moved faster than anyone expected. 3 months later, it was finalized. I walked away with a fair settlement, and peace of mind. I moved into a new apartment across town. Started therapy. Focused on my work, which honestly became my anchor through the whole process. And the biggest surprise? A letter from Megan. It arrived about 6 weeks after the case was closed. She'd found out about me after everything became public through the filings. Her letter was long. Heartfelt. She'd had no idea Jason was still married. He'd told her he was separated and finalizing a divorce, same lie he'd told everyone in that town. We met once, for coffee. And in that moment, I didn't see a rival. I saw another woman who'd been deceived, just like me. We talked for hours. She was furious. Heartbroken. Trying to figure out how to protect her child from the fallout. In a strange way, talking to her gave me closure. It reminded me that none of this was about me not being enough. Jason had chosen this path. Lied to both of us. It was his failure, not mine. Now, it's been about a year. I'm in a new apartment. Work is going well. Therapy helped me rebuild my sense of trust, in myself, first and foremost. Do I still think about it? Of course. Some days, the betrayal hits fresh. But most days, I feel stronger. Because here's what I know now. Trust isn't words. It's actions. And if someone can live a double life for years, they were never the person you thought they were. Now, I surround myself with people who value honesty. Authenticity. And little by little, I'm learning to trust again, starting with myself.